Elon Musk can't pretend anymore, and the black millionaire makes history with secrets. The air inside the glass tower of the San Francisco Innovation Summit was thick. Bright lights bounced off polished floors like spotlights on a stage. People buzzed with excitement and stress. Phones never stopping. Voices rising and falling in quick bursts. At the heart of it all stood Ethan Carter, tech billionaire, media darling, and the man whose name crowned headlines every day. But tonight wasn't about flashing cameras or applause. Tonight, something was about to break him. Ethan's gaze drifted over the crowd, but it snapped back when a tall figure stepped into view. Calm, unreadable, moving with the confidence of someone who doesn't belong, but owns the room anyway. Marcus Thompson. The name sent a jolt through Ethan's chest. Marcus wasn't just another entrepreneur. Rumors whispered around the tech world said he held secrets. Deals older and darker than Silicon Valley wanted known. His jaw tightened, hands clenched into fists beneath the table. Sweat slicked his palms as he forced a smile. When Marcus nodded and moved closer. "You never left the city behind," Marcus said quietly, voice like gravel. "Funny how the past refuses to disappear." The phrase struck deep. Ethan swallowed hard. The weight of decades slammed into him. The lonely nights working, begging for chances no one gave. The silence from people who mattered most. His chest felt tight, like a fist squeezing air out of him. Around them, people noticed. Low whispers passed. "Who's that? Isn't that the guy from back then? The one Ethan never mentioned?" Eyes flicked between the two men, their tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Marcus's dark eyes didn't waver. "I've got truths, Ethan. Things that could undo everything you built." Ethan's throat went dry. The pressure of fame, the demands, the constant eyes felt like a chain dragging him down. Could he face what Marcus held? Could he face himself? He wanted to run, but he stayed. Because deep down he knew this was coming. The question wasn't if his empire would fall, it was whether he'd stand and fight or crumble beneath the weight. Suddenly, a hush fell over the room. Marcus pulled out a small worn photo, edges frayed, colors faded. Ethan's breath caught. It was them, two kids, grinning wide, caught frozen in a long, buried moment. "Remember?" Marcus whispered. "Before it all got twisted. Before you forgot who you were." Ethan's hands trembled. The crowd's murmurs swelled. The summit's bright lights suddenly felt harsh, blinding. His legacy, his identity, everything he fought for, it suddenly felt fragile, uncertain. What was Marcus hiding? What kind of past connected them so tightly that the ground beneath Ethan's feet seemed ready to crumble? Silence stretched. Eyes darted. The summit buzz faded into a tense heartbeat. And then the challenge hung heavy in the air. Are they destined to tear each other down? Or build something new from the ruins? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important warning. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube removed their subscriptions without notice. Take a quick look at the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any exclusive content that's coming. And since you're here, Drop a powerful. That really helps me with the algorithm. Oh, and let me know in the comments, what city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. Ethan held his breath, the air crackling with tension. The photo hung between them, like a frayed thread threatening to unravel. There they were, two kids, against a backdrop of chipped brick walls and rusted fences, grinning as if the world belonged to them. But what had it become? Then, just as the crowd leaned in, a sudden commotion erupted at the entrance of the auditorium. The doors burst open, and a uniformed officer strode in, a sense of urge. Who was he here for? Ethan Carter! The officer's voice sliced through the murmurs, sharp and commanding. We need to speak with you. It's urgent. Everyone froze. Ethan glanced at Marcus, whose face had paled. What's happening? He whispered, barely audible over the silence. The officer approached, his gaze piercing. Come with me. There's no time to explain here, he said, a hint of alarm creeping into his tone. The crowd buzzed again, whispers flowing like rapid water, apprehension climbing with each second. Ethan's pulse raced. He stood up instinctively. Me? What's going on? Panic mixed with confusion. He didn't understand, but something deep inside him knew it was serious. We're taking you to the precinct. There's been a development. The officer's words slipped into a gravity that felt like quicksand. Ethan's mind was racing now, fear welling up. Had he done something? Was this about Marcus? But then the officer added, connected to the investigation into your company's finances. Eyes darted around them, shock and whispers. What does that mean? A voice in the crowd blurted out, as if all were holding their breath for the answer. Just come with me, sir, the officer said firmly, his posture tense. The urgency crackled in the air, thickening the atmosphere. Ethan turned to Marcus, who was now watching him closely. But words failed him. He felt as if the floor beneath him was tilting, dragging him into an abyss. Just then, a loud crash echoed from behind the officer. The audience gasped. A woman stumbled into view, wild-eyed and breathless. Wait! Don't take him! She shouted, her voice breaking with desperation. Ethan's heart skipped. Who is that? He thought, confusion slicing deeper into his thoughts. The woman burst through the throng, pushing people aside like a fierce wind. And then she pointed a shaking finger at him. Ethan, you have to trust me. They're lying. The crowd gasped again, eyes snapping between Ethan and the newcomer. A dozen emotions spun inside him. Trust, lies, the weight of the moment felt heavy, as if the air had solidified, holding everyone captive in a collective breath. Ethan stared at the woman. What are you talking about? His voice broke. They set you up. It's all a trap. You don't know the whole truth. Tears streamed down her cheeks, a cascade of anguish, and suddenly the world around seemed to tilt again. Get her out of here, the officer commanded, but Ethan couldn't move. He was rooted, heart hammering like a drum against the cage of his ribs. Don't listen to them, she pleaded, desperation cracking her voice. There's so much you don't know about your past, about Marcus and what you built. Finally, Marcus stepped forward, tension rippling through him. What do you mean? And then the ground seemed to shift again. The woman locked eyes with Marcus, the air thick with danger. You don't want the truth to come out either, Do you? Because it will change everything you think you know. Silence fell like a weight, and the air crackled with questions, confusion swirling in the crowd. Ethan felt his reality bending, twisting, threatening to snap. Now, the stakes felt larger than anything he had faced before. Could he uncover the truth? What if everything was a lie? Or worse, what if the answers plunged him into darkness he couldn't escape? And the crowd held its breath, waiting for the next moment to unfold, an uncertain future hanging in the balance. Ethan felt the air crackle between them, the weight of history almost tangible. He was about to speak when a loud crash shattered the tension. The glass doors flew open, and a figure burst inside, breathing heavily, eyes wide with panic. "Get down!" the stranger shouted. The crowd froze. The music faded, replaced by the harsh thumping of Ethan's heart. He glanced at Marcus, whose expression shifted from confrontation to confusion. But then, the man lifted a small device, something dark and sleek that glinted under the summit's lights. A gun! Screams exploded around them. Panic ignited. People swarmed each other, desperate to escape, shoving and stumbling. Ethan felt the floor vibrating beneath him, bodies rushing in all directions like a stampede of terrified sheep. But he stood still, anchored by the sight before him. Marcus moved instinctively, shifting slightly in front of Ethan. "Stay behind me," he ordered, authority mingling with an unexpected protectiveness. Ethan couldn't move. He felt rooted, caught in a game of chess he didn't know he was playing. "Everyone on the ground!" the gunman barked, voice laced with fear and adrenaline. His gaze darted around, wild. "I want Ethan Carter!" The words struck like a punch in the gut. Ethan's thoughts raced, his past rushing back, the moments of being that kid on the streets, dreaming of more. But that spotlight was never meant to shine on him. It was unthinkable. Why now? Why here? "Ethan!" Marcus's voice snapped him back. "We need to go! Now!" But before either could move, the gunman raised the weapon higher. "You think you can run from this? You can't escape the truth!" Panic flooded Ethan's system. He felt the hot rush of shame, the kind that had haunted him for years. Memories of struggles, voices from days long gone, all converged into this moment. Suddenly, the crowd's restlessness morphed into chaos. Someone knocked over a chair, and another person screamed again, pushing against bodies, fleeing. In that instant, the gunman's focus shifted, perhaps sensing the crowd closing in on him. He tightened his grip. Marcus turned to Ethan, eyes sharp. "You know what he wants. You need to confront it. Confront it." The words echoed like a mantra. But how? The fear coiled inside him. But he felt a flicker of anger too, something raw and unfiltered. "I didn't ask for any of this." "Neither did I," Marcus replied, a flicker of frustration breaking through. But deep inside, there was something more, a shared history reverberating between them, suddenly more potent than ever. Just then, with a frantic shout, a woman lunged toward the gunman. "Don't do it!" she screamed. In one swift motion, the world tilted. The gun went off, a deafening crack that reverberated against the glass walls. Shock swept through the room. Ethan's heart raced. Time froze. He caught a glimpse of the gunman's face, twisted in fear and confusion, before chaos erupted. The crowd surged forward, pushing back against the glass doors, desperate to flee the horror unfolding. "Ethan!" Marcus shouted again, urgency etched on his face. "We can't let this end like this." But as Ethan surveyed the destruction unfolding, the screams, the chaos, something else caught his eye. A flash of white across the gunman's shirt. A symbol, stark and familiar. A mark from his past. A reminder of things buried deep. Things he thought were hidden forever. Marcus's eyes widened as he noticed too. No, not him. Not now. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. The truth. The unraveling. It was all connected. He had to face whatever lay ahead. But how? And what consequences would this twisted turn of events unleash? Ethan's breath caught as the gunman hurled curses, fear etched into his face. The crowd pressed against one another, a wave of panic rippling through the auditorium. He was still trying to wrap his head around the flash of recognition, the mark on the gunman's shirt, the way it danced with shadows of his past. But before he could gather his thoughts, the violent explosion of a gunshot rang out, shaking the very foundations of his world. Ethan froze, heart racing, unsure if that echoing sound had been real. Then chaos erupted. People screamed, some fell to the ground. Others tried to scramble for the exits. The air was thick with terror, muffled cries, and the unmistakable scent of fear. The lights flickered, casting eerie shadows over the faces twisted in shock. "Ethan!" Marcus shouted again, urgency flaring. "We need to move!" But he couldn't. He couldn't tear his gaze away from the gunman, who was now wavering, eyes wild, like a cornered animal. And then, just like that, the world shifted under Ethan's feet. The gunman's finger twitched, and then he suddenly dropped the weapon with a loud clang against the polished floor. The crowd gasped collectively, confusion mingling with hope. "Enough!" he screamed, voice breaking. "You don't know who I am? None of you do!" What was he talking about? But before Ethan could process it, the stranger pointed at Marcus, chest heaving. You think you're the only one with a past? You've buried the truth, and it's coming for you." The words sliced through the tension like a knife. Ethan felt a chill creep down his spine. A truth? What truth? His heart raced, pounding out a frantic rhythm as the gunman staggered forward, each step heavy with intent. Marcus shot a look at Ethan, confusion swirling in his dark eyes. "Ethan, stay back." "Maybe it's time I stop running from it," the gunman choked out. He looked around, desperate. "You think you can forget? Forget us? Forget everything?" The room held its breath. Ethan felt the ground beneath him shifting again. "What do you mean?" he shouted, fighting past the pounding in his ears. Suddenly, the woman from earlier, the one who had yelled about lies, rushed forward, her eyes wide with realization. "No, you can't do this!" But she was too late. The gunman tore off his shirt, revealing a tattoo. Bold, angry letters intertwining to form a name. A name Ethan thought he'd never see again. Cade! It echoed in Ethan's mind. His childhood friend. Or was he more? The memories came flooding back. A tide of laughter, dreams, and promises. A bond of brothers forged in a world of struggle. Marcus surged forward, face pale. "No, you shouldn't be here! Why not?" Kate laughed bitterly. "You made me this way. You always thought you were better, Ethan, but you don't know the whole story. What happened after you turned your back?" Ethan could feel the walls closing in. The truth, the past, it wasn't just haunting him. It was here, right in front of him, ready to shatter everything. "What did you do?" Cade's face twisted, anger bubbling beneath the surface. "What did you do when you rose to fame? Abandonaste? Abandonaste?" Vier crackó. Every gaze in the room was locked on the three of them. A damne triángulo de acusaciones and old wounds. Ethan felt a lump form in his throat, the weight of memories pressing down. But then, just as the tension reached a breaking point, Cade's expression softened, haunted. "You have to understand, it was never just about you and me. There are bigger players involved." Before he could finish, the tension exploded. The lights flickered and cut out entirely, plunging the room into darkness. The sound of footsteps thundered, charged with raw urgency. The chaos grew, screams echoed, but for Ethan, it all faded away. In the dark, everything felt different. The lines of friendship, betrayal, and guilt blurred. Could he trust Marcus? Was Cade the villain? Or was he simply a reflection of Ethan's choices? A haunting reminder of his past. And as silence fell, confusion roared. What lay ahead? What secrets had Cade brought back to the surface? Would Ethan find redemption? Or would the truth tear everything apart once and for all? The darkness hung thick, and in it, the questions hovered, ready to be unearthed, waiting for the next ray of light to pierce through. The silence hung in the air, thick and charged. Ethan's pulse thrummed in his ears as he stared at the faded picture Marcus had unfurled before him. Their smiles, innocent and carefree, felt like ghosts from a life he'd buried deep beneath layers of ambition and success. The crowd's murmurs faded into the background as time slowed, the reality of the moment crashing over him like a cold wave. "What do you want, Marcus?" Ethan's voice was steadier than he felt, but every heartbeat drove a dagger of fear deeper. Marcus leaned in closer, his breath, "I want the truth to come out. The world didn't see the darkness you climbed over, but I did, and if I share it—" A sharp sound cut him off. A loud crash echoed through the room. Eyes snapped toward the entrance as the polished glass door shattered, shards raining down like confetti. Panic surged, gasps rippling through the audience as a figure darted in, panting, wide-eyed. "Ethan!" she shouted, her voice piercing through chaos. It was Sarah, his tech officer, a memory of smooth brainstorming sessions and hurried lunches flashing in his mind. But today she looked terrified, her cheeks flushed with urgency. "You need to—" Before she could finish, an explosion of sound rang out, drowning her words. The lights flickered, and a heavy rush of air swept through. It was like the world around them cracked open. The crowd recoiled, screams erupting, cutting through the tension like a knife. Ethan's breath hitched. Terror washed over him as reality shifted. What's happening?" His voice was barely a whisper, panic clawing at his chest. "Ethan!" Sarah's eyes locked onto his, filled with a desperate urgency. "You're not who they think you are. There's something you don't know." Marcus shifted, attention torn. "What are you talking about?" But before Ethan could demand answers, Sarah, shaking, pulled a small device from her pocket. A glowing screen flickered to life, revealing a document, a birth certificate. Confusion twisted inside him. "It's real," she urged, trembling. You were never adopted. Your mother, she's still alive. She was never missing. She's been working behind the scenes all these years, and she's coming for you." Ethan felt his chest cave in. The world spun, the glass walls of the summit now closing in as if he might suffocate. "What?" "Marcus knows," Sarah pressed, glancing toward him, now a stranger in Ethan's eyes. "They did everything to keep you from her, from the truth. It's all a lie." Silence swept through the summit again, now heavy with disbelief. Gasps turned to whispers, questions floating like smoke in the air. Who were they really? What had Ethan built on layers of deception? Marcus's expression shifted. The calm confidence was cracked. He looked caught between loyalty and self-preservation. "I didn't want to drag you back. You were supposed to stay safe." Ethan's gut tightened. The foundation of his entire life felt like it was crumbling beneath him. Everything he'd worked for, every decision, it all hinged on buried secrets that clawed to the surface. Then, just as the weight of it all bore down on him, the room braked into chaos again. A security alarm blared, lights now flashing red. "Get out!" Sarah yelled, grabbing Ethan's arm, her urgency snapping him back to the moment. But he couldn't move. He was rooted, dying to uncover this new truth about himself, about Marcus, about everything he thought he knew. Outside, the sirens wailed, a storm of confusion, betrayal, and fear swirling around him. What lay ahead? Was the past going to consume him whole, or did he hold the keys to unleash everything held in dark corners of his life? The questions spun wildly, leaving echoes of uncertainty in the chaos. He had to know before the glass tower fell, before everything was lost. The tension hung thick, and the air crackled as Ethan stared at the faded photograph in Marcus's hand. It was a snapshot from a life he thought he had buried, filled with laughter and innocence before the world twisted them into what they had become. Suddenly, the room jolted. A loud bang shattered the heavy silence. Like thunderclaps in the confined space, people jumped, eyes wide with shock. Ethan's heart raced, panic squeezing around his chest. He whipped around, searching for the source. A figure burst through the entrance. A man in a dark suit, his face pale as a ghost, eyes wide with terror. "Get down!" he shouted, voice cracking. The crowd surged, a wave of bodies moving in frantic chaos. "What is happening?" he shouted over the commotion. Behind him, screams erupted. "They're here!" the newcomer yelled, pointing behind him, heart pounding, gasping for breath. "Security! There!" An explosion erupted, not far from where they stood. The ground shook. Glass shattered like rain around them. Ethan hit the floor, pulling Marcus with him. The moment felt suspended, time hanging in the balance. The screams grew louder. The crowd erupted into sheer pandemonium. People rushed toward exits, scrambling over chairs, trying to escape. Panic thickened. Ethan's mind raced. Who was attacking? Why was this happening? Marcus gripped Ethan's shoulder, his voice a low murmur amidst the chaos. "We need to go, now!" But Ethan hesitated, his eyes darting over the crowd. Then came a sound that froze him. Another explosion, closer this time. the air filled with smoke and the acrid scent of burning metal. As Ethan squinted through the haze, figures appeared. Armored men stormed in, faces hidden behind balaclavas, weapons drawn. Ethan's heart dropped. They weren't just here for chaos. They were hunting something. Or someone. Had Marcus been right all along? Was there more to its past than he ever thought? "Come on!" Marcus shouted, pulling Ethan toward a door marked Emergency Exit. But as they neared, an intense light flooded the room. A harsh spotlight suddenly pinned them, making them feel exposed and vulnerable. Ethan fell back, fear coursing through him. As he stumbled, he caught a glimpse of the advancing figures. One bent low, yanking the suit of the man who had entered first. A startled cry rang out. "Ethan, you have to tell them! They'll expose everything!" Ethan's breath caught in his throat. Who was this guy? What did he know? Before he could react, a loud voice boomed from the shadows, commanding authority. "Marcus, remember who you are. You can't let him take control." In that instant, everything shattered in Ethan's mind. The twisted past he thought he had buried surged back like a tidal wave, crashing against the walls he'd so carefully built. Marcus turned to Ethan, his expression unreadable. But a flicker of recognition sparked in his eyes. "I wasn't supposed to be here. Not like this." Whispers raced through the crowd. "What does he know? Did he betray us?" Ethan's vision narrowed. Everything spiraled. The man in the suit, he wasn't just a random guard. He was part of something bigger, something that could destroy him. What was Marcus hiding? What secret was tied to all this chaos? Ethan's heart pounded against his ribs, questioning everything, fearing for the moment when the truth would finally claw its way out. As the smoke thickened and chaos erupted into complete turmoil, one thought consumed him. Are they destined to unite against this storm, or will they be torn apart by the very truth that brought them together? Silence hung thick, every heartbeat a drum, echoing through the room. Marcus held the photo, and the distant buzz of the summit faded, leaving only the sounds of Ethan's racing thoughts. But before Ethan could respond, a loud crash reverberated from the entrance, startling everyone. The glass doors shattered, sending shards spraying like glittering confetti across the polished floor. People screamed, and the craw. From the chaos, a figure lunged forward, frantically waving something in the air. "Ethan! Ethan!" The voice was frantic. It broke through the noise, piercing straight to Ethan's core. It was Laura, his assistant. Her face was pale, eyes wide with terror. She stumbled to a stop in front of him, chest heaving. "Ethan, you need to see this! Now!" Disoriented, Ethan's heart raced, but he felt the world narrowing down to the fear in Laura's eyes. "What's going on?" he managed, sensing the urgent energy that crackled in the air. "It's Isabel," she gasped, locking eyes with him. She's Ellie." "Who?" Marcus cut in, irritation flickering across his face. "His daughter," Laura replied, barely holding back tears. "She was in the car. It crashed. It's bad." Ethan felt the world tilt. Isabel, his little girl, the light of his life. The panic flooded in, overpowering everything else. His past, his secrets, even Marcus's looming threat. "What do you mean it's bad?" he demanded, dread like ice in his veins. "They're saying there's a situation. You need to come with me," Laura urged, grabbing his arm. "Now!" "No!" Marcus interrupted, voice sharp with authority. He glanced at the crowd, confusion tightening the air. You should stay. You can't let this distract you. Ethan shot him a furious look. Stay? My daughter could be hurt. I can't just... And with that, like a dam breaking, the truth of the moment crashed in. The past clenched around Ethan tighter than ever. Memories he thought were buried clawed their way to the forefront. You knew, he whispered to Marcus. You knew about her. Marcus stared back, the calm facade cracking. I didn't want to. I didn't think you'd want to know. Not after everything. What did you do? The accusation burned in Ethan's voice. Marcus's gaze darted, vulnerable for the first time. It's not what you think. Isabel, she may not be who you think she is. The weight of those words slammed into Ethan with the force of a freight train. What do you mean? I mean... Marcus hesitated, swallowing hard. I mean she's connected to me. By blood. All at once, the summit collapsed into chaos. Gasps erupted around them, whispers brushing over like a winding storm. Is that true? Someone shouted from the crowd, disbelief echoing in the open space. Ethan's world shifted, tilting on its axis. The room spun. He felt the ground beneath him tremble. What are you saying? He croaked. Your father, he... Stop! Ethan shouted, the fabric of his identity tearing apart. Everything he built, everything he fought to leave behind, crumbling. Who was he really? The boy from the streets? Or a man bound to secrets he never wanted? But before Marcus could respond, there was another crash, this time behind them. The crowd's murmurs turned to screams again, as if the night itself demanded chaos. The lights flickered above, and a collective gasp filled the room. A police officer burst in, urgency flooding his expression. We need to evacuate. There's been a threat. Threat? A chill shot through Ethan as adrenaline surged within. What weird could happen? Questions hung like heavy fog. Could he trust Marcus? Was Isabel truly his daughter? And as the chaos mounted around them, one thing became painfully clear. Everything was unraveling, and the truth seemed more dangerous than ever. Ethan felt the tremor of fear grip him tighter than ever. The chaotic roar of the crowd faded. The emergency alarms became a distant echo as Laura's words clawed at his mind. Your daughter, Isabel, she's connected to Marcus. He could barely breathe. Desperation tightened around his chest as he fought to process what that even meant. Get out! The officer yelled again, his urgency slicing through the chaos like a knife. But the room felt like it was closing in, shadows creeping closer. A ripple ran through the crowd, people moving, a surge of bodies pushing past each other like water crashing against a dam. Marcus's eyes narrowed, dark and stormy. You can't believe her, Ethan. This is all a distraction. He sounded defensive, older, like the weight of every secret he'd kept was finally pushing him down. But then, from the corner of the hall, a deep thud resonated, a door slamming open. A short figure rushed in, panting, eyes wide. Stop, the man shouted. Don't believe them. Ethan turned, heart racing. What? Who are you? Sam, the man blurted out, his breaths sharp. I'm your cousin, and it's true. Isabel's connected to all of this. He pointed at Marcus, desperation etched on his face. He's been lying. Disbelief struck Ethan like a cold wave, the room spinning. Cousin? What was happening? Get him out of here, Marcus shouted, fear creeping into his tone. But Sam stepped forward, trembling but determined. Ethan, it's real. You have to listen. Your mother? She never left. She forged your identity. Isabel has a different destiny, and they're all involved in keeping it hidden. The crowd gasped again, shock waves simmering through them. Questions swirled as whispers flew. Is he telling the truth? Could it really be? Ethan felt something inside him snap. Anger and confusion churned. Why should I trust you? This is insane. I'm trying to save you from the very danger you've unknowingly danced with. Sam implored, eyes fierce. You've got to believe there's a bigger game at play, and it involves all of us. Within the buzzing crowd, the air grew tense like a coiled spring. Ethan's mind raced, a storm of doubt and fear crashing against his once sturdy foundation. He felt roots of trust tearing, each new revelation shaking him to his core. Enough! Marcus's face twisted with rage. You'll ruin everything! In a single motion, he lunged for Sam, but Ethan intercepted. Stay back! He felt adrenaline rush through him, igniting a protective fire deep inside. He had to know the truth. Just then, the lights flickered violently, plunging the room into darkness. The cacophony turned into a distorted symphony of panic. Screams erupted. The spotlight above swung erratically, blinding everyone. Everyone down! Someone yelled from the back. Urgency layered into the chaos. And then, in that swirling darkness, the unmistakable sound of gunfire echoed. A sharp crack rang out, piercing through the tumult. Time slowed. Ethan felt the cold rush of fear, icy fingers gripping his heart as bodies dropped around him. Cries of terror shattered the last remnants of safety. He dropped to the floor instinctively, clutching Laura in a protective hug. "Get behind me!" Marcus shouted, but Ethan couldn't hear him anymore. All he could think about was the reality crashing down around him. The last thing he saw before the darkness consumed the room was the look of sheer horror on Sam's face. It's not who was connected to whom. What was the real story behind Isabel? As painful silence fell, he couldn't help but wonder. When the smoke cleared, would the truth finally come to light? Or would they all be lost in the shadows? Ethan felt the tremor of fear grip him tighter than ever. The chaotic roar of the crowd faded. The emergency alarms became a distant echo as Laura's words clawed at his mind. Your daughter, Isabel, she's connected to Marcus. He could barely breathe. Desperation tightened around his chest as he fought to process what that even meant. Get out! The officer yelled again, his urgency slicing through the chaos like a knife. Panic washed over the room. Bodies shoving against each other, faces painted with terror. Marcus's eyes narrowed, dark and stormy. You can't believe her, Ethan. This is all a distraction. He sounded defensive, older, like the weight of every secret he'd kept was finally pushing him down. But then, from the corner of the hall, a deep thud resonated, a door slamming open. A short figure rushed in, panting, eyes wide. Stop! The man shouted. Don't believe them! Ethan turned, heart racing. What? Who are you? Sam, the man blurted out, his breath sharp. I'm your cousin, and it's true. Isabel's connected to all of this. He pointed at Marcus, desperation etched on his face. He's been lying. Disbelief struck Ethan like a cold wave, the room spinning. Cousin? What was happening? Get him out of here, Marcus shouted, fear creeping into his tone. But Sam stepped forward, trembling yet determined. Ethan, it's real. You have to listen. Your mother, she never left. She forged your identity. Isabel has a different destiny, and they're all involved in keeping it hidden. The crowd gasped again, shockwaves simmering through them. Questions swirled as whispers flew. Is he telling the truth? Could it really be? Ethan's gut twisted. Anger and confusion churned inside him. Why should I trust you? This is insane. I'm trying to save you from the very danger you've unknowingly danced with, Sam implored, eyes fierce. You've got to believe there's a bigger game at play, and it involves all of us. Within the buzzing crowd, the air grew tense like a coiled spring. Marcus's face filled with fury. Enough, he screamed. You'll ruin everything. But just then, another figure emerged from the shadows. An older woman, wild-eyed, hair a frenzied mess. Ethan, she shouted, her voice a haunting melody that cut through the noise. It's all true. Don't listen to them. What? Ethan blinked. She looked familiar, but was a stranger at the same time. Your mother, she cried, pushing past the crowd. She's been watching. Everything is a lie. Isabel isn't a child. She's a weapon. Ethan felt his heart drop. A weapon? Confusion crashed over him like a wave. What are you talking about? The woman grabbed Marcus's shirt collar. You know what you've done. You led them to him. You sold his mother out. Ethan flinched. What does she mean? He felt a knot tighten in his gut as panic swelled. Marcus's face blanched. No, this isn't right. He shook his head violently. It's not what you think. I did it for your safety, for everyone's safety. The crowd recoiled, whispers igniting like flames through the auditorium. What does this mean? Could it really be true? Then Cade stepped out from behind the havoc, gun in hand, and the room stilled. No one moved. Every breath felt stuck, every heartbeat a drum of dread. I'll expose it all, he began, voice low and twisted. Everything you've hidden will come to light, starting now. Ethan felt ice in his veins. This was madness. His life was spiraling into chaos. What was true? Who could he trust? And then, just as the weight of all revelations crashed, Cade shouted, Isabel is the key to our liberation, and soon everyone will know it. Before anyone could react, the lights exploded into chaos, a blinding white that consumed everything, swallowing shadows and fears. In that moment of disarray, there was a flash, a piercing clarity that shifted everything. And then darkness fell abruptly. Ethan found himself face to face with Marcus, confusion etched on his features. What have you done? He whispered, the truth dancing in his eyes, and then silence descended, questions hanging in the air, frail and fragile, just as the stakes rose to their highest. In that moment of darkness, nothing felt certain anymore. The shock of what had just been revealed lingered, and with it, a mystery deeper than anything Ethan had ever known. The truth lay just out of grasp, waiting to unfold. Ethan gasped, the chaos swirling around him like a storm consuming everything in its path. He was caught in a whirlwind of truth and betrayal, hands trembling as he tried to make sense of it all. The familiar face of the stranger, Sam, flickered through his mind, a beacon of potential answers in the disaster unfolding before him. Voices. Meanwhile, Cade paced, gun still held high, a haunting reminder of how quickly things could shift. The truth is coming out. Secrets can't stay buried. Ethan's heart raced. Was that the answer? Could whatever Rachel, this stranger claiming to be his mother, held the key to everything? The light at this terrible tunnel's end. In the chaos, he spotted Laura, her face pale, but determination set in her jaw as she made her way to him. "Ethan, we have to find Isabel," she yelled, eyes wide with panic. At the sound of his daughter's name, everything fell into focus. He had no time for personal questions. The truth about his past was massive, but unlike the shadows stalking them now, it could wait. Isabel was his priority. "Where is she?" he asked, urgency coating his words. "I heard she was taken to the nearby hospital. We can't delay." Laura grabbed his hand, pulling him towards the exit as the crowd surged around them, shouts echoing like ghosts of their panic. "Wait!" A voice broke through. A woman pushing toward them, wild-eyed. "You can't leave. You need to know more. It's all connected." Ethan felt a pull at his attention, but shook his head. "I can't!" he shouted back, determination fueling his voice. His daughter needed him more than answers to questions lying in the shadows. As they reached the exit, gunfire erupted again, loud and chaotic. The glass doors smashed as the world outside exploded in sound, like thunder crashing in the night sky. "Run!" shouted Marcus, gripping Ethan's shoulder, a rare moment of unity. They bolted toward safety as the building trembled around them. Outside, the night air was thick, cool against his skin after the heated chaos of the summit. Lights flashed from police cars, illuminating the scene in stark reality. Emergency teams were everywhere, people shouting orders. It was a mess, a cacophony of voices clamoring for attention. Ethan! His heart raced as he spotted Isabel being wheeled out on a stretcher, a team of paramedics surrounding her. Relief flooded him, but it clashed violently against the uncertainty in his chest. "Isabel," he cried, rushing forward, and knelt beside her. She looked frail, a thin blanket covering her small body, but her eyes were bright and alive. "Dad?" Her voice trembled, confusion clouding her features. "What happened?" Ethan's heart cracked. "You're safe now. I'm here." He took her hand, squeezing gently. But the shadows of truth loomed over them, threatening to cast doubt. This warm moment was a balm, but the world was chaotic. He knew the danger wasn't just outside. Just then, Cade emerged from the chaos, eyes wild. "I can help," he shouted, hands raised in surrender. "But we have to act fast. They know everything now. They're coming." "We don't need your help," Marcus warned, standing protectively by Ethan. "Do you want to find out what really happened?" Cade's voice surged with urgency. "Because it's bigger than you think." Ethan looked from Cade to Marcus and then back to Isabel. Every second was precious, every choice a potential new beginning or catastrophic end. "Get ready," Ethan decided, clenching Isabel's hand. "We have to reveal the truth. not just for us, but for everyone who's been hurt. The night air crackled with tension as they prepared to confront whatever darkness lay ahead. Would they face it together? Or would the threads of their past pull them apart? He didn't know, but Ethan felt a flicker of hope burning inside him. They would take this step together, whatever came next. And as they moved toward the oncoming storm, one thing was clear. The truth had a way of setting them free, but it also had a way of consuming them whole. You have to subscribe now. Hit that red button so you don't miss out on what's coming next. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments with your thoughts and theories about this wild ending. And don't wait even a second longer to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see where this story goes next. Your support means everything.